Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Reinsurance Podcast. I'm your co-host, Jared Lee.
And I'm Ben Rose. And today, we're both wearing our Supercede t-shirts because
are.
we did a thing.
We did a thing.
We're proud of it.
Coming soon. No, it's out now.
Yeah, out now.
Out now. Our most recent white paper.
Indeed, which is always exciting. We haven't done one for a while, actually, but
We haven't.
this one more than makes up for the gap in delay because it's filled with the, I would say, the brain juice of many people, but that sounds a bit gross. The insights.
All your grey matter is in our white paper.
So much grey matter, except in Supercede blue colour schemes.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
palettes. But no, we basically
Designers.
spent the best part of 4 or 5 months actually just touring around the industry and turning lots of conversations with underwriters into a bit of a survey, a bit of an interview around how they grapple with what has come to be known as the reinsurance data crisis.
Yeah. Well, if we spend just a moment at the start of why we sort of thought of this paper, what we wanted to do, was we were having all of the conversations around data work and other things that are happening in the industry, and getting these little bits of anecdotes from reinsurers around what they're needing to do and how they're compensating and adjustments they're needing to make along the way. And the more we kind of talked about those things just anecdotally internally, like there's something here. There's something the market is trying to convey, that there's not been a route in which they can sort of say, here's what we do, and then building a sort of narrative around that. So I think the objective was to sort of then go around and sort of structurally have tons of conversations. We have hundreds of hours of interviews, and try to get a consensus around what happens in the market actually when you're given, like, here's a zip file with 34 different sheets in it and all these different tabs, and sometimes there's just errors that you can't reconcile. Like, what does that mean? Like, everyone knows, like, it's bad, but tell us what that means. And that was sort of what we've gone out and done in this paper.
And meanwhile, we've made this brief podcast, and it is deliberately brief. We are under strict instructions from Cordy that this podcast has to be only a third as good as the white paper maximum. So I may sort of wave angrily like this at Jared at times to stop him talking, to make sure we don't give away any of the secrets buried within, because we do want you to actually go and read this white paper. You don't want to just hear it from us. You want to hear directly from our many senior contributors from around the industry, and learn a bit about what really happens behind the scenes when reinsurers receive data that's not up to scratch.
But they don't need to delay. In the show notes of this podcast, there's a link. They can click it.
I feel like
right then you're going to have the pod. Right, you can read the white paper whilst listening to our podcast.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. what's they normally do point at like, there's a button here. Floating. I don't know if Cordy can if we have the capability to do that, but
all of our design efforts been on the white paper. There's no time for buttons, Ben. There's no time for pointing buttons.
Yeah.
But that's sort of where we went off. But as we did all these papers and all these interviews, and we sort of structuring the insights, what we got, Ben did a huge amount of lifting on sort of the bringing the paper together and putting words behind what we wanted to say, but not without a reinsurance twist, mind.
Oh, indeed, yes. So you will discover as you open the paper that it is somewhat resemblant of, I think that's a word,
it is.
Of familiar structures that you may have encountered in your work in the reinsurance industry before. We have built a tower of information, which we would attempt to give you a sort of brief walkthrough here today on the show, so you know what to expect.
Our love for reinsurance goes. Even the structure of our white papers looks like a tower.
We're continuously reinstating our credentials. No, but the paper is brilliant. Please do actually stop listening now and go and check it out, because you won't regret it, and then you'll enjoy the recap when you resume this episode, in case you glossed over any of the extra special bits that are hidden within its pages.
Welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you for taking a moment to go away and read the paper. If you didn't, one more chance. That's it. Well done. Okay, so now welcome back again. Having read the paper, I will just give you a recap after reading it now of what the sort of general theme of the paper is. Basically, we discovered, to actually our astonishment, I don't think either of us imagined finding what we found out.
Mm.
But we all knew, I think, beforehand that data in the industry was rubbish. That was sort of the context. That even the firms that were doing the best, it tended to be the best of a bad bunch versus what the reinsurers actually wanted to be able to use. But what I think was very surprising within that was the uniformity of response at the core, and then the variety of like extended responses that we found through the industry when an underwriter is grappling with bad data. And I think, at its front, it came out in things like, one, underwriters naming exactly the same rough levels of pricing load that they would apply every single time. Like literally, 80% of the underwriters that we spoke to would give us the exact same range of figures between which they would add a pricing load. Clients individually named for having really bad data, which obviously we didn't put in the report. But typically we're seeing just a really, really consistent approach to dealing with uncertainty of information in the reinsurance industry. It seems to be like a secret background practice. I don't know if there's like a conclave of underwriters internationally who all meet together to coordinate how they're doing this, but I guess it's common practice. It's trained, it's shared as people move from firm to firm, and they say, how do we deal with this? This looks a bit dodgy. Oh, well, we take that and then we do this. And so the paper explores in a bit of detail how underwriters are actually doing this, but usually quite consistent approaches to dealing with dodgy data. But after going into all of the issues and how underwriters tend to respond, we get all of our interviewees' views on what to do about it. What should you focus on? What makes you win the beauty contest? And being a hard market, we are very much in beauty contest territory right now. We talk about the importance of transparency. We go into the debate about, is showing more going to hurt you or help you? And then finally, we talk a bit about how this industry as a whole could start to lean into some innovation with the help of better data.
As we unpack things, there was a ton of uniformity in the answers. That was surprising to me. As we sort of lined up our interviewers or interviewees as we started the process, I was expecting massive deviations for how one firm would land and how they thought about it to others. And the broad alignment into like the handful of ways that they really apply or the impact that it has as they look at evaluating a cedent's data, I thought was really, really interesting. One of the bigger surprises I took. The other one that you touched on is sort of in the structure, but the people putting down their pen. That was one of the other things that I hadn't thought of going into, or wasn't expecting it to be as prominent as it featured. But reinsurers going, we have this much of a capacity here, but we'll have that or take a huge portion of that away just because we're not sure. Like one of the ways to protect themselves against uncertainty was we just didn't give them very much capacity. For our downside was reduced that way. And in those kind of like, it's a hard market. Capital's hard to come by. And so that really jumped out to me as one of the real impacts that you saw.
Yeah, completely. I think that was huge. And it also fed into this, I guess, getting inside the underwriters' heads a bit. The way, and it was acknowledged as a change a few times when it was discussed, but acknowledging the way that we've shifted from a kind of one at a time approach to underwriting to a much more of a portfolio approach. So underwriters knowing this is how much we need in our premium pool for this portfolio. We're now going to go out and choose roughly how much we want to get from these various client types, segments, etc. And we'll choose based on where we're most confident in what we're getting into. And that goes, flies in the face of traditional narratives of like every account underwritten on its merits, and and people going and whining and dining each other and having these great relationships where they, get the best deals. When in reality, actually, a lot of the time, like you really have to earn special individual treatment, and to earn special individual treatment, you've got to have the data that stacks up for underwriters. We had quite a few underwriters talking about their committee processes, how, if they want to deviate from the process and look at an account differently to the standard way of pricing things internally, they have to go through all these internal steps, which they will not do unless they feel like they're backed up by a pretty robust data set. So tons of little impacts we hadn't thought of.
And I think in many ways, what's happened is the reinsurers have gotten more sophisticated over the last couple decades, quite drastically so. So what used to have been we always get kind of all this like hodgepodge of data, but that person's good people. They've never let us down before. That client's always been reliable and they've always been in the ballpark. And that was good enough for a long time. Reinsurers now have a higher threshold of like proving it. Like, I trust you're being honest, and you're like, you have to back it up now. And because the reinsurers are becoming more sophisticated, it's really, really hard to get approval from these committees and get something extra, special treatment, if you can't provide the data that the reinsurer will use to justify that. So in many ways, the reinsurer's sophistication around understanding their own risks and their portfolio strategies and everything else is creating this demand for some better data to justify behaviors that before they could have justified based on nothing more than the quality of a relationship or the size of an account. And that's beginning to no longer be the case.
Absolutely. And I think tied into that as well, we were able to get a bit of a view into what goes on behind the scenes of these relationships, because at the moment, internal things don't really get exposed in the going for a catch-up call between the cedent and the broker, or the broker going for a lunch with the underwriters to discuss where we're at with the placement, etc. But we really got to go behind the scenes in this report and see, okay, what's actually happening. When you're sat as an underwriter with a pile of submissions, how do you decide which one to start with? How do you get the data from the pack into whatever it needs to go into next? And I was really astonished by the extent to which and the frequency with which it was mentioned that basically the nudge effect is huge when it comes to, well, we've got the really tough ones, which are a pain and we know are going to kill us, that we avoid like the plague for as long as possible. The easy ones where it's like, oh, the data's great, we start with right away, and as a result, their client experience is like, we're the best underwriters ever because we get back to them within the day, because their data is so good. Whereas on the other hand, if your data is pretty bad, there is all the relationship chat going on around like, oh yes, we're hard at work doing your data. Actually, typically they're not. They're kicking it down the road, trying to avoid it because they just really don't want to spend their day sifting through your rubbish kind of nonsense Excel file or trying to retype from your PDF file that you kindly provided all of your data in.
Yeah, and there was very much this sentiment of let us help you, right?
Which I think the brokers echo very loudly as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And brokers were involved in the conversations that we did in the market as well. But there's when we're going, and this was almost a happen chance result, was the fact that this is coming out during the hard market, or in the middle of a hard market where programs are being restructured. The need by which you have to evaluate various pricing options and things you might want to buy in the market. And if you don't have data that allows you to quickly do that work, you're then going to be sort of handcuffed to just kind of what you've been doing. And then similarly, in a hard market, you do not want to be moved to the bottom of the pile of your reinsurance partners. Like, that is going to result in something worse. And the better, the faster you can sort of be, oh, I picked them off the top because I know it's going to be the best sort of few hours I'll spend on this one. Again, I'll be off to the race. I'll send them my reply back and then move down the list. Like, if you're towards the bottom, it's just there's no scenario that's the best spot to be in a hard market. And so all of this is beginning to align. And I think that message was also being reiterated quite strongly by the reinsurers.
And just to wrap up, because I know we're short on time, let me share with you some of the best quotes from the paper. Here they are at the link. Click on it. Go and look. Go and read the amazing paper. And we look forward to hearing your thoughts. Get in touch. Let us know if those findings resonate with you as well, if you weren't already one of the contributors, in which case enjoy reading your own thoughts and seeing how much they were shared by the wider community.
Thank you, everyone.
See you soon.